It took me a while to warm up.
No, it's okay.
Art is about
Yeah,
blah,
exactly.
blah, 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 blah,
I
blah,
mean,
blah.
I don't think about it too much. I don't want it to stress you out.
Okay.
But just
I'm already stressed out.
Oh,
I'm kidding.
don't worry.
My name is Butler, and I am an artist. I was supposed to become a chemical engineer. That's like the set. You know, when you grow up as an African child, they always say, this is from when you're like 2 years old. Like your parents told you this is exactly what you're gonna be. Then I found the internet, and I was like, wow, people are just being creative, and the stuff I just like do randomly, people just like, you know, it's celebrated. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. But there was no way to kind of like tell my parents directly, like, hey, I'm gonna be an artist. So I said, I'm gonna become a graphic designer. So that was like the loophole. I think we all drew when we were kids, you know, like stickmen and, you know, funny stuff. I just never stopped. I think that's kind of like the difference. Like one thing I really liked, there's this comic called Super Strikers. This is a football comic, and I think that's what I used to read that a lot. You could get them in only Texaco petrol stations, and that was like a hunt just to like go and find like the latest issue. So I think that was like my first introduction to like any kind of modern form of art in a way. I think it was comic books for sure. My art is, I think I would say it's a conundrum of sorts. It's been described as very minimalistic and very also quite complicated at the same time. Which is what I realized recently. I come from a culture which is like very colorful and very extravagant, and this is razzmatazz going on. Everything's happening. It's this color clash, and it's beautiful. And I think that because it's so kind of stereotypical, I think I've not kind of embraced that and pushed that forward. And it doesn't also help because I'm colorblind as well, so it's like I'm very funny with colors. So I think I kind of, even with my work, I kind of lean towards like kind of more sterile, and that also has a connection to do with my mom being a nurse and my sibling a pharmacist, also exposed to very kind of medical environments and very sterile. So I think I was much more attracted to those things that bring me a sense of calm and silence rather than things that are literally reflective. So it's kind of like trying to camouflage myself in the environment that I'm in. I was doing all these drawings, and a friend of mine was like, hey, you should do a show. And I was like, really? Do it? Like, just show it and just like do a thing? And I was like, you know, there's no gallery, there's nothing. She's like, oh, you know, just like, you know, rent a space and then show the work, and, you know, and maybe let people buy a ticket, and they can use the ticket to pay for the space. And I was like, okay, cool, all right. And it's like, I think it was like the summer before I started university. And I was like, cool, I'll do a show, etc. So I was like, I put it on my Instagram, and I was like, it's £5 for a ticket, and like 90 people bought tickets, and I was like, oh, 90 people want to pay $5 to come see my shit? This is great. And it was all like A3 pieces in like IKEA frames, and it was like cheaply done. This artist, Tiny Tempo, is a rapper, and it was like, hey, and it's so like I was doing like various stuff then, not just like art. I was doing like photography and making like a little animation and videos and blah blah blah, whatever. And then emailed me because they thought that it was like different people's portfolio in one space. I was like, oh no, it's just me. And I was like, hey, do you want to be an art director? So I started working for him, managing of that and being in all this kind of like, you know, big boy circles from being very young. I think that's what helped a lot, and also the fact that people thought I was very very old. Because I've looked the same since I was 16. So people just thought I was like a really old dude. So I think they just kind of trusted me a little bit more. And then they found out my age, and they're like, oh, crap. It was very funny in the beginning when I first started making work, because I used to post photos of myself, and people always thought I was a white dude. It was so much fun.
So they realized.
Yeah. You just go to a meeting, and they're like, hi. And you're like, oh. I didn't get introduced of a world where racial discrimination was quite prominent because I didn't grow up here. I moved there when I was 15, and you know, I was just hit with that. But I think I was privileged enough to, because I grew up in Nigeria, I kind of knew where I was from, where my great grandfathers were, like my family, like, you know, everything. I knew everything about where I was from, the culture, exterior, blah blah blah. beyond colonialism, beyond all that stuff, and moving here, I could see the kind of shift and difference because I'm like, oh wow, these people are grown up in a different set of ideas where they're made to feel belong, but they don't belong at the same time. And I kind of like, I knew how I felt when I first moved here, and I had that kind of like, I was like, wow, shit, like where I come from, I'm just, you describe as your like a tribe where you're from, like Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, blah blah, whatever, like different dialects, and there wasn't really any intention, but like move to somewhere else, it's like, oh, you're black, and you're like, wow. And over time, I think maybe things will get better, and well, it will get better over time, yes, for sure. But I think for now, I think the focus is just like improving things and making sure like if you belong to a community where your voice has not been heard, I think now is the time to kind of amplify those voices before things get for things to get a little bit better. I think my creative process is, I think I consume a lot, and then I think that I just regurgitate like everything I've seen, and I think that's what most creative people do.
Yeah.
In a way, it's kind of like a blender. Everyone just has a different setting, I'd say, but same ingredients though. Oh, maybe you never know. But I also believe that there is a creative consciousness that everyone taps in from. And I think this sounds like kind of mystical. The tools I use are actually super simple, but I use two tools. So whenever I'm working small scale, which is like on like A4 piece of paper, I use a fine liner, which is like everywhere. And when I'm working big scale, I use a sharpie. But people don't seem to accept that. I liked the consistency of using pen, but then using paint or ink. The idea of like dumping and it doesn't work for me. I like my ink to be in my hand. So I think that, and because I didn't follow a traditional art career, so I had no kind of snobbery against like, oh, use a Sharpie. Oh no, so blasphemous. I just kind of wanted to make what I think is maybe missing somewhere. I'm trying to fill a void. I'm also trying to express myself, so it's like a bunch of things. I've always kind of like want to kind of represent everybody. Like I kind of, when I'm 90 and dying, I want, if you look at my work, or like all my work over time, you can see like each person from anywhere in the world can kind of find themselves reflected back with them.